Thank you. Well, good morning, good evening to those who are joining from India today. I'm Jennifer Hinkle with the Data Economics Company. I'm very excited to host this panel discussion at the Data Economics Festival. We're talking about the potential for self-driven education and the opportunity for data-backed incentives, digital data-backed incentives as part of self-driven education. And I have, before I introduce the distinguished group of panelists that I have, I want to welcome people to the Data Economics Festival. I want to remind people that you can learn more about all of our activities this week on lydian.com/festival. That's lydion.com/festival. We have some fun activities as well as more than 20 content panel sessions. So today we have, following all of the sessions, a golf clinic to get you ready for summer. And we also have a sing-along, live sing-along. So fun for all ages there coming up this evening. But before we get there, a bunch of very interesting talks today. And so with that, I'd like to go around briefly introduce this great group of panelists and get into the talk about education. So if we could start, Mr. IYER, would you like to introduce yourself? And then we'll go to Mr. GOYAL. I know the two of you work together on the HINKEL project, and we'd like to hear a little bit about that. We'll then go to Ian Bernstein from Misty Robotics, and then to KUNAL BASU from Squirrel Music India. So Mr. IYER, please, could you start?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Good evening to those in India. It's really a pleasure to be on this panel. First of all, I want to thank Lydian for putting this amazing event together. The whole week session, I've been watching few of those. It's just incredible. The panelists and also the discussions, the topics has been phenomenal. My name is SURESH. I have been associated with HINKEL as a volunteer for over 15 years. And I truly consider it as a blessing to be part of this organization. Currently, I'm serving as its CEO for the last 3 years. So for those of you who may not know HINKEL Vidyalaya, it's probably one of the largest nonprofit organizations, especially if you were to look at it from an Asia perspective. Popularly, it's also known as One Teacher School. HINKEL basically stands for the power of one. We believe in the power of one child, one teacher, one school, one village actually transforms the entire community, basically the change agents. So we want to really focus on that. HINKEL's primary focus is in rural areas, especially the remote and tribal villages. For those of you who may know it, India's population of almost 1.2 billion, 50% of that lives in villages. That's scattered over about 400,000 plus villages. Of that, about 200,000 of those villages are extremely remote and live in tribal areas. And if you really look at the population living in this segment, the infrastructure is absolutely minimal. There are no roads to get these to places. And also the facilities available for the children in these villages is absolutely nothing. In spite of government setting up some primary schools, etc., in these places, it's just not functioning. So HINKEL took task 30 years back in 1990, identifying these 100,000 cluster villages that are extremely remote, and we wanted to make some impact. So started with an experimental project of setting up one teacher school. Basically, that entire village has one school set up. It is not a brick and mortar type of a building, just somebody's backyard. It is maybe a playground facilities, or it is something behind the temple. You know, it just doesn't have to be. In fact, it's really nice that kids actually sit under a tree and learn. I wish I had done that. But it's incredible the way these kids have been, they have been deprived of this opportunity. Every child should have an opportunity to learn. And we are seeing this 100,000 villages as a sample. You know, the rate was lingering in single digits. And especially if you look at the girls' literacy rate, it was even worse, because most of these villages, the kids, especially girls, they used to do household chores, and even boys would help the parents in the agriculture field. So education is really the last priority for them. And most importantly, the government schools are not working because, you know, those schools are set up to run from 9 to 5 during the daytime, and 90% of the kids are in fields working with their parents. So HINKEL actually adopted that model where kids, after they are done with this chore with helping their parents, come back in the evening, and we provide 3 hours of continuous education. Basically, we teach them math, language, reading, writing, and most importantly, value-based education, which is really our core competence in respecting nature, respecting village, respecting community. Those are the things that needs to be built in, because your personality is based on that when you grow up. So we focus mostly on those areas. And it's amazing, in the 30 years, our journey has come a long way. Just as of end of last year, we met our initial target of reaching 100,000 schools, 100,000 villages. That means each school has a teacher, 100,000 teachers, and almost 70% of them are women. Because women tend to stay, they are stable, they tend to stay in the village, they can create a beautiful rapport with the kids. Kids really adore them. Therefore, the learning becomes more of a fun activity. So I think our focus is how can we impart education in a fun, lively environment that they can carry along, because we don't want them dropping off. They have to be provided with the spark to learn. And I think that's what we have been focusing. Again, HINKEL is all about numbers. Again, our model is just $1 a day basically provides education for the entire year for a child. And that is only one part of it, because we have close to about 400,000 volunteers. This is completely a volunteer-based organization. All of us here in the US, we are all volunteers, including myself. But I think we do it because of passion. I think one is a professional way of looking at it, is other one is the compassion way of looking at it. I think this gives me personally, I think I am more selfish in that aspect, that it gives me the benefit of both. Being a professional, I have seen the career, but being the other philanthropic side of it, this even gives you involved, because writing a check is easy, but actually translating that amount into something tangible that is serving the community and the society, especially those underprivileged. I think we feel blessed to be able to do that. And I'm really honored to be on this panel. Thanks, Jennifer.
Sorry, I was on mute. Mr. Iyer, thank you so much. Your passion for this shows every time you talk about it. And I've just been so enthralled hearing about ECHL from when I first found out about them. And it's an organization that I've been telling a lot of people about, because it's just amazing the impact that you can have on kids, and hearing the stories of how these kids just have a great trajectory because of the opportunity to get education that they otherwise would never have had access to. So it's really incredible. I mean, Mr. Goyal, you've also been working on this same project. Do you have anything to add to that? That's a hard act to follow.
I know. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, I'm technically based out of Mumbai, and I lead the organization in India. We have a trust of which I chair. And all I will add to what Suresh has already spoken about. He has given an extensive talk about what HINKEL is. If somebody needs a little more information, our website is pretty good. It's called EKAL.org. So for those who want to know a little more about HINKEL, that's a website. There's a whole bunch of videos there which show you what really, it's easy to talk about it, but when you see videos about the schools running there, it gives you a great idea of how education is imparted to these kids. So at a typical 25 to 30 kids in a classroom where we teach up to third grade, we are right now talking about 3 million kids in school presently, and maybe 3 times as many already taught by our system. So the kids come to school for 3 to 4 years, depending upon how much they are able to grasp, because they have had no formal education ever. And the kids are anywhere from maybe 6 years to 12, 13 years of age. So it doesn't matter really, because we are teaching them informal education. So the going forward, I think what we have realized is that the biggest advantage the kids will have to join them with the digital world, as the world is moving forward, is to bring e-education to these kids. And it gives you 2 benefits. One, the kids get exposed to digital world, and 2, that the curriculum is very structured. Right now, we are dependent upon how much the teacher is able to grasp from our master trainers. And so the first step that would probably the required is how do we make the teachers very efficient and proficient in the matter that we want the kids to learn. That's where really self-education, I think, is going to play a role, whether the teachers can self-learn and then teach the kids to become self-learning. That's where I think this whole thing kind of ties up with the session that we are in. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So next I'd like to go to Ian. I mean, Ian, you've spent, I think, most of your career, if not your entire career, really on that technology and digital side. So can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you're working on now and why you're so passionate about this topic.
Yeah, so Ian Bernstein, currently head of product and founder at a company called Misty Robotics, where we're working on these platform robots, and we'll get back to that in a second. So I've just sort of had just really passionate about this space, had a super non-traditional education since I was a kid. I think through K through 12 and college, I've dropped out of school 5 times. Never ended up graduating college. The first time I dropped out, I was in 4th grade, which was a small public school in very rural New Mexico. There was a little over 100 kids from K through 12. And after that, ended up learning most of what I knew until college from the internet. Basically, I just sat on the internet for 17 hours a day and just was just curious about different things. When I was 12, I got into robotics, and through that passion that I just sort of instantly discovered, learned about a lot of things, right? Like, you know, when I'm talking to people on message boards when I was a kid, I didn't want to look like an idiot, so I wanted to learn how to write better and communicate better. And, you know, through robots, like learned about, you know, all different kinds of subjects as they sort of surround this passion that I had. But anyways, like later on, just sort of as a hobby, was into robots, studied electrical engineering, dropped out of school, took some time off, transferred up to Colorado State, went back into electrical engineering, ended up dropping out 2 times there, and then went to a career fair to just kind of see what jobs were available as I was maybe a year away from graduating, and all the jobs just sounded really boring. There are all these just big companies, and I got kind of depressed. And over sort of a winter break, I thought, well, you know, if all these jobs are boring, maybe I could just create my own job. So maybe I should learn about business. And then I was like, well, the best way to learn about business is to start a business. So I ended up starting a web design company, and then later in 2010 started a company, actually a robotics company called Sphero. So that company, our biggest product, is kind of over in the corner there, BB-8. We sold BB-8, an app-controlled version of BB-8 in all the Apple stores and Best Buys and stores around the world, and sold several million of those. A little bit before that, we started to get into education. We realized that this product, or original product, was Sphero, so it's like BB-8 without the head. One day we thought, well, maybe kids could learn from this. So we put a bunch of tablets, our test devices, and a bunch of Spheros in a case, and went to a local school, and the kids loved it. And the way you program Sphero is all around angles. So there's math and trigonometry, and since then we've had teachers adopted to teach art and physics, like, so art, like put puddles of paint, because the Sphero is waterproof on the ground, and then the kids can either just manually drive it through the paint to draw pictures, or they can write little programs either visually or with code on their devices to draw patterns, sort of like we used to do back in the day, programming the turtle and logo.
I do remember that.
Where they'll, like, again, maybe put a puddle of paint in front of a ramp, and then drive Sphero through the paint and off the ramp, and then see where it lands, so they can see a mark, and then measure the distance from the end of the ramp to where the Sphero landed, and do projectile motion equations and things like that to figure out the angle or how fast the Sphero was going when it left the ramp. So that has taken the education side of Sphero has really taken off. So it's less about entertainment, but it's all sort of this learning through play. So Sphero is now very education focused in tens of thousands of schools worldwide, and individual kids learning with Sphero. And then about 3 years ago, spun out this new company, Misty Robotics, to build these more sophisticated robots. And that's the bigger one next to BB-8. Companies are using Misty to program different use cases. So things around elder care, education, healthcare, lots of different applications. But we are finding, we did a project not too long ago where we used Misty to teach kids, actually overseas, rural kids, programming. So we set up an environment. There's a customer of ours, ReRobots, that enables you to program the robot over the internet via webcam. So we set up this whole challenge arena. We gave 3 kids at a time the chance to do 30 minutes of work, teaching kids about robots and what robots are, and then 45 minutes where each kid gets to be the lead programmer for 15 minutes and solve a third of the challenge that they're trying to get through. And it worked very well. And now we have some different groups, education groups, that are taking that to rural schools to try to figure out, how kids that wouldn't have access to robots like Misty, or really any robot, allow them to be hands-on with robots. So sort of broad, like that's what we're doing, and just a piece of my background.
Ian, thanks. That's amazing. And we have many things we can follow up on. I was just talking to a friend the other day about, she's supporting a bunch of girls to go to STEM camp this summer. And I'm like, man, we should make sure their STEM camp has some robots. So we'll chat about that in a bit. That's fantastic. Kunal, I'm now going to go to you. Can you tell us a bit about you, what you've been up to with Swirl Music? And then after you speak, I'm actually going to play some of the videos of these incredibly talented kids that you have. I actually, after watching these videos, I texted Arco right away and I said, oh man, these kids are so talented. I feel like we should be setting up a record label for them with KUNAL, because it's just incredible. And the testimonials they give about the joy of their learning music with you, and how incredible the online teaching has been for them, even, or I should say, especially during this pandemic time. It's just amazing. So, congratulations for all that you're doing, and thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening from Mumbai, India. Good morning to everyone out there in America. My name is KUNAL BASU. I just want to start off by saying it is just such an honor to be on this panel, which is one of the coolest panels I've been on. We've got Mr. IYER and Mr. GOYAL just, heading such a great initiative, and Ian and all his work, graduating from the University of Hard Knocks almost, and making it big, such an inspiration. So fantastic. And Jennifer, I of course know all the good work that you guys are doing at Deco and Lydian. So it is just fantastic to be here. I am, like a lot of Indian kids who does well in school, a computer engineer. We just shoved into computer engineering because it's either that or being a doctor. And, we have no doctors in the family. So computer engineering was the way to go for me. But my engineering days were unhappy. I did not, have the chance or the courage to quit right there. I needed to see it through. But it was around 19 when I was in my second or third year of engineering is when I discovered the guitar. I took guitar lessons. I took one guitar lesson when I was 10 years old. And the guitar teacher told my dad that I had no music in me. I had absolutely no potential. And that was the end of that. The guitar happily went into the corner and flying kites and riding cycles and playing cricket like every other Indian kid does. That took over. So during my exams, I happened to get, find this guitar which just had this one string on it. And I asked my mom if we could fix it up. And she said that, okay, you finish your exams, you get a good score, I will, get the guitar fixed up, and we'll take it from there. So during that whole study leave and exam period, I had just one string on the guitar, and I used to just play tunes, and it just kind of came naturally to me. And my mom was happy as well. So what happened is, after the exams, the guitar got refurbished, got new strings, got cleaned up, and money was a little tight for the family. So again, we had to just do whatever it took to kind of save up for maybe guitar lessons, or just learn stuff by listening to it. A friend and I would do stuff over the telephone. Hey, put this one finger here and tell me how it sounds. And it was so prehistoric back then. And we'd read magazines back in like 1999, 2000. Guitar God magazine was one of them, and we'd look at tips and tricks and stuff, how to get better. Like a lot of engineering students who find working in a corporate environment boring, I jumped onto the BPO bandwagon, which is basically answering calls to people in America, because that was considered easy money. You work night shifts. It's a cool job to have, so that's what kind of funded my first few years, along with a few private lessons, that I took, and word spread, through word of mouth. A couple of students from the same classroom started really doing well and enjoying my lessons. And their class teacher, Mr. Chad Mills at the American School of Bombay, called me up about 6 months into their learning with me. And he said that, are you the guy who's helping them with guitar? Because they don't want to play outside anymore. They want to just stay in the class and play guitar. And I think that's really cool. So I was like, yes. And he said, can you teach me? So I taught him, and we became good friends. I always had this little gift for writing little rhymes and poems. So we started making songs together to teach these 5th grade kids about the environment, a little bit about math, a little bit about history and stuff like that. And at the end of the year, the 5th grade showcased on stage an entire concert where I wrote the songs, and some of the kids and I played on stage. It went off really well. It was really, really successful. And after the show, the principal offered me a job at school. And because I did not have a degree in music, neither did I have a degree in teaching, I had to start right at the bottom. So I had an assistant to the music teacher job, where I had to do everything from photocopy music notes, to arrange the chairs for the orchestra, to clean the spit out of the saxophone, to polish up the instruments and make sure everything was in order. And just as time went on, I imbibed a lot from her, took notes, learned, and practiced that on my private lessons. There was a little bit of a gap when she was unwell, and I was made substitute teacher in that school for about a good 3 weeks. And that is my, I think, turning point as a teacher, where I said, I can do this. I have the confidence to do this. I love it. And I know I'm going to do a good job. My dad always told me to treat, guitar lessons as a business. He said, if you treat things like a hobby, you'll get paid as if it's a hobby. If you treat it like a business, you'll get paid like it's a business. And those are the words I've never really ever forgotten. I think about that a lot. And schools grew. We grew with people coming in and word of mouth, and we soon had a lot of students, more than I could handle. So I roped in a couple of teachers with me. So we became a 2-man, a 3-man, a 4-man team. And then we expanded to different instruments from guitar. We took on vocals, drums, and keyboard. And before you knew it, I had a nice little business running with about 4 schools and about 60 to 70 students. So I was on my motorbike, zipping up and down Bombay, snaking through the traffic, trying to teach as many people as I could. And I absolutely loved it. In 2007, I formally started my music school called Swirl Music, and things have started off a little slow, but things picked up. And in the last 5 years, we have now expanded to teaching over 6,000 students in 30 schools across 8 cities in India. So I love my job. I'm sure Mr. IYER, Mr. GOYAL, and Ian, and you, Jennifer, we say this, that our job is the best job in the world, you know, because for us, it's not a job, it's following, you know, a passion, you know, and you don't watch the clock, you don't mind putting in those extra hours because it's your baby. So Swirl Music is my baby, and when you show everyone the clips that you will show them in a bit, that for me is a greater reward than anything else. You know, when we have kids coming to us and saying, hey, I love this class, and can you help me with this song now, or can you talk to me about this and that, and parents come and tell me that, you know, you've really given my kid so much more confidence since he started playing you know, the guitar, or she's singing so well now in front of people. You could not hear her speak in a crowd, and now she's singing in front of like 500 people on stage and stuff like that. That to me is the best reward, you know, and the best part of my job.
So Kunal, with that, I'd like to just share with the audience here some clips of these fantastically talented kids.
Go for it.
This is an awesome, especially for me, like to do this in the morning and start my day hearing these beautiful voices and seeing these kids play.
Hi,
it's awesome.
I'm Raj, and I'm 10 years old. Today I'll be playing From the Back in Anger by Oasis. So I'll play it for you now. Slip inside the eye of your mind. Don't you know you might find a better place to play?
This kid rocks.
You said that you'd never be, but all the things that
Look at his guitar. Look at all those cool stickers on the guitar.
All right, I'm just gonna play a couple clips of a few of these. All right, oh, this was one of my favorites. Kunal, I think we should rent this kid out to play at weddings. This would be a hit. All right.
Yeah.
I've just got a couple more for you guys. These are so fantastic. Oh, here we go. These are just awesome. I'm going to play just one or two more for you guys. And then I want everyone to also hear some students and parents talk about the impact you've had on them.
She has dreams to be and then be, so she's starving, you know, cover girls eat nothing. She says beauty is pain and there's beauty in everything. What's a little bit of hunger? I can go a little while longer. She fades away. She don't see how perfect. She don't understand. She's worth it all. That beauty goes deeper than the surface.
You know, I just love to see these kids, even at that kind of awkward 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 age, just with so much confidence.
Yeah.
And here's, this is one of the testimonials, I think, from a parent just talking about the impact this online learning has had for their kids during the pandemic.
Hi, my name is Akshay. I live in California. I came across world music around a year back, just when COVID started, and got interested in enrolling my son Aryav into ukulele classes. I was initially apprehensive about the online learning format, wasn't sure if it was really going to work out, but we decided to give it a shot. And I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm amazed by the level of engagement that Aryav has in the classes. He really enjoys the classes with Kunal. I think Kunal does a spectacular job in not just teaching the ukulele, but also really connecting with his students. Aryav looks forward to his classes, and he's been doing great.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing now. And the thing that strikes me, seeing all these kids, listening to you talk about it, also just hearing Ian's story, thinking about these, the ECHL program that I've been familiar with for a while. Something different happens with learning and education when people are really into it. I think, there's a way that you can kind of go through learning and be just on receive mode. And then something really, there's a transformation when you get self-motivated and when you're self-driven and kind of get on that journey of discovery. So I guess my first question would be, I mean, Kunal, I'll maybe go in reverse order back through the group, but Kunal, we've talked a bit about just that motivation that comes with students. I mean, these kids, they're not playing, I mean, some of your kids are trained classically and playing classical songs and they're into that. A lot of these kids are learning pop songs and they're very engaged with the digital online learning. Can you talk a bit about how you keep them engaged and what excites them?
Well, we at SWIRL have one core philosophy, and we say this all the time. We put the fun in fundamentals. I firmly believe that if your lessons are made fun, they will stick. If you become friends with your students, they will be more eager to learn stuff. A lot of times, a lot of kids kind of have a pushback when we do a little theory or some classical pieces. But if you teach it, if you package it in a fun way, in an easy, light way, and you have a great rapport with your students, I think that solves 99% of the problem, So we keep our kids motivated by setting targets, and targets that we work with the kids on, So it's a target that these kids choose themselves with consultation with us. So if I were to teach you guys as a group of beginners, we'd say, okay, we're mid-April now. Where do we see ourselves in June? Can we nail down 4 songs and probably play that for our families, And somebody will say, okay, we can do it. And some will say, okay, can we do 2 songs, and you kind of nudge them and win them over and do that kind of stuff. Performances are big, the performances, I think, gets the best out of students, gets the best out of teachers, and students, not only because they play better, but if you see the level of confidence before a performance and after the performance, these kids really feel like 10 feet tall the moment they successfully, present, whether it's a 30-second piece or whether it's a big 5 or 6 minute piece, they really are floating on air once they get that performance under their belt. And then it kind of becomes addictive, Music is an art form, and a big part of expressing yourself in an art form is to perform, to display the skills that you've acquired. There is a certain school that says exams and certificates are great, and that is as well important. But my biggest aim is to get children to enjoy their lessons and get them to perform with confidence, and that kind of unleashes their creativity, their talent, and it just snowballs from there.
Yep. And Kunal, I'll come back to you a little bit later and we'll talk about the digital platform that we're working on together. Sure. To keep students engaged and motivated in the things that we've talked about. But I'd like to go to Ian and hear his thoughts. I mean, Ian, whether this comes from your own personal perspective and the journey that you took learning and being, mostly self-taught. And then how that translates into what you think about is engaging learners with robotics and engaging them in whether it's art, science, all the different things that they're learning with this tool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I love robotics for education is it just encompasses so many different disciplines. There's the art side of it, from the industrial design, how the robot looks, to psychology of how people interact with the robots, to all the engineerings, electrical and mechanical and computer science. And then of course on the business side, all, from the CEO to marketing. So I think it's a really powerful way to connect with kids with so many different interests, and to explore that through the robot, and then get to work with other students or other people on all the other aspects that you need to build a successful robot. I had a question for maybe some of the other panelists too. Like my girlfriend is a second grade teacher in a public school in Denver, and we talk a lot about education and the system, and the system that we have for public schools here in the US just really beats down a lot of kids, and it beats down a lot of teachers, and I think a lot of us are doing really interesting things in music and another way to teach with one kid and one teacher, and all the stuff that we're doing with robots. But a lot of these are teachers, at least still a lot of teachers pay for these spheros on their own, out of their own pocket, right? Because the public school system doesn't pay for that. And a lot of kids that excel in public schools have a special teacher, or have somehow, are just self-motivated to sort of get out of, the regular curriculum and requirements that they have to do, and they kind of go above and beyond that. But how do we, how do you see these other, what you're doing in India, how do we get that into sort of the more public education? Like how do we change that system so that it's not just sort of cranking kids out, and kids that are slow get left behind, and kids that are excel get restrained because they don't have the freedom to really go above and beyond in the public school systems. How do we, what do we need to do to sort of change that system? It's probably a hard question, maybe.
No, Ian, I have a couple of thoughts on that. I come from India. I went to a regular school, a private school, though not one of the top schools here, but you do have private schools and public schools here. So I know what you're talking about. And kids are just getting churned out by the millions every year, not getting any education that they're going to use in the real world. So, and there's a funding problem here as well. Teachers are not given, equipment that they want for, to better the kids and stuff like that. I think for the system to change, parents are a huge part of that system, and I'm talking from a music point of view, because in a country like India, music is often kind of swept under the carpet. It's not considered core. It's considered what you say in India, and Mr. IYER and Mr. GOYAL will be familiar with this term, something called a time pass subject, something that passes the time and doesn't really add any value to your life, going further. So to break that kind of thought process, we've got to take this to the parents, because all these ideas water down into the kids from the parents. So once we change the parents' mindset, once we get them on board, once we communicate more with them that this is what we're doing with your kids, this is the help it's giving your kids. It may not be tangible on a scorecard, but this is the invisible good stuff that's happening to your kids, where they're using left brain, right brain stuff. They're gaining confidence. They're talking about different things. They're opening up their horizons to new avenues. So if we get the parents on board, and have them buy into our way of thinking, that kind of waters down to this generation of kids, and things go forward, and you can do that by really being smart about showcasing a few success stories really well. And then you have parents who are quite competitive by nature. Hey, this kid can do it, maybe my kid can, so let me do that. I turned 40 last year, and about 20-25 years ago, it was ludicrous for a kid to tell his parents that, hey, I want to buy all this music gear because I want to be a career musician, but I see things changing. They're slowly changing, but they're definitely changing, because parents come to me and ask me, hey, do you think my kid has the potential? Should we invest in a program? What can we do to help our kid become a career musician? So that whole kind of mindset where you have to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or an accountant to be successful, or have your parents' business to be successful in a country like India, is slowly changing. People are seeing musicians who are playing on stage. People are seeing musicians who make background scores for movies and compose for jingles, do well. People are seeing teachers like my crew and me make a decent amount of money every month, through teaching. So slowly mindsets are changing, but we've got to just all pull together, just hit those parents and get it into them that music is not, or any art form apart from a history, a math, a geography, and a science, is not something to be laughed at. It is just right up there with everything else. It'll be slow, but I think with people like all of us, if we put our best foot forward and we work really hard, we can definitely see a change soon.
Couple of things I would like to quickly add to Ian's question. So I would just call it as breaking down the barriers. Obviously, you can't take up the entire thing at once, but you have to make some small progress. So one of the things that we have tried to incorporate that in HINKEL school systems is basically looking at it from how are we able to make an impact at a child level, because the parents are going to continuously monitor the child. And if they see that there is a progress that they didn't see before, they become almost like your ambassadors. And it is through this communication, because we can't take on this big mafia, right? Because that's how the system is set up. They are going to go through a standard program that they think has worked best, and they compare against UN sustainability goals and maybe the school board system. So they have set up some parameters, and always it is a measure against the parameters. Is that right? Probably not, because I think you can't really have a cookie cutter approach to apply that to across the board. Each child's learning behavior is so different. Some are visual, some are audio, some are kinesthetic or tactile learners. And how do you recognize that and provide that media that would encourage them to actually pursue that? Because we don't know how many Ians are there in India, in these remote villages, how many Kunals are there. That's what we are trying to find. And if we can tap that resource, encourage that, give them that spark just to start with, then they are on their own. We will, just like how Ian said, frustrated with the type of system, he went on and found something that actually fulfills the passion. And now that passion can be turned into something that he becomes a role model others can look into. Same thing with Kunal. So it's just incredible that just in this panel, we see examples, and that's what parents look to. Previously, they thought that's possible because it was very structured approach. Now there are multiple avenues. Internets have actually opened up this so much that sitting at home, you can just take MIT classes. It's incredible. Khan's Academy is a beautiful example, open source. 10 years ago, probably you couldn't have thought about it. Now you can pick and choose. So that's where the parent has to become a facilitator. I think that's a very simple role to perform than creating a rote learning that is very common in India. Kids should learn and comprehend the subject. Then they can actually reach the heights that they are potentially capable of. I think that leverage that if we can provide as a parent, that has to be an influential role. So I think if we can transform even at a very small scale, and get parents to look at the potential that is embedded in their child and not be really construed by the past thinking that was ingrained in them, I think that will open up the avenues quite significantly.
So I'll just add a couple of things to what Suresh has said just now. India has recently come out with a new education policy, and that policy is completely different than the way education was imparted earlier when Kunal and I and we went to schools there. And, we just learned the same old stuff, whether it was 40 years ago, what I learned, and 20 years ago, what Kunal learned, probably were the same books. And what's going on here? We're just doing the same thing or repeating it. Now the new policy brings in a few changes, and that also takes into account some portion of learning outcomes. So what the kids learn, and that's what we talked about, that if a kid learns something, what is the outcome? What is the impact of that? And what we are also trying to do in the EKAL villages is, we, as Suresh mentioned earlier, the kids become change agents. Parents are uneducated also. So the kid comes to school, he learns, then in the evening, he talks to his parents about what he learned, right? So how do we tackle adult literacy in India? Right? This is becoming a vehicle for parents to learn things also. So, and once we go digital, of course, there are challenges in India. Internet is not so pervasive as it is here. So you could go to anywhere in the US and you will have internet. But these villages are so far remote that much as Indian government is making a great push towards bringing internet to every citizen of the country, might take another 3 or 4 years, but it's happening at a very fast rate. So once that happens, and the kids are able to go to the internet, just like Kunal learned from the internet, or Ian learned from the internet, these kids will have that facility. So we are trying to bring the digital education to these villages now. And if we have better mechanics that how the teachers can learn from these tablets, we are looking at tablets. Okay, we don't have the resources to provide a tablet to every child. But even if, let's say, we teach up to 3rd grade and the school kind of groups itself into 3 groups, those who are slow learners are in grade 1, or the others are in grade 2, and the high learners are in grade 3. So we provide a tablet to one group at a time, and the teacher has a 4th tablet. And so he's trying to, so like I said before, the challenge is that the teacher has to first become proficient in the learning through the tablet so that the same can be imparted, and kids can take these tablets home and maybe tinker around with it. But here we have a challenge that we have to put pre-packaged programs into the tablets because they cannot access internet right now. Mm-hmm. Eventually we will come to that, but right now pre-packaged programs is what we are looking at, and it's a huge challenge. I mean, we've been working on this for the last couple of years, and we've probably been able to go to 500, 600 villages with this program. But, I can clearly see, the things getting really fast, to get to a larger number of kids with this education.
That's fantastic. And I know we've talked a bit about the technologies that can enable learning. I mean, we've also had conversations, I think each of us prior to this panel, about how technologies such as the data economics technologies that we're working on at DECO can help identify these outcomes that are meaningful and follow these downstream outcomes, the impacts that education can have on the broader community, as well as on the individuals being educated. Kunal, we've also spoken a bit about how can we have kind of measurements, badges, awards, these kind of incentives or gamification of learning that can be motivating to students and can also be a thing that they can show their parents to help impart the importance of this learning. So, maybe replacing some of these standardized tests, or if not replacing, sitting alongside of exams or certifications or tests. I mean, I think, we have several examples on this panel of, some of us have had formal educations more so than others. Some of us are in fields where we didn't necessarily have an education in that same topic, but we came to learn on our own. Do all of you have any thoughts about about that and what kinds of ways we can use the technology to help motivate students, what kinds of things they see as incentives to keep learning.
I mean, definitely a lot of technology that you guys are working on with being able to give kids credit. We're adults, right? Credit for learning that you've done. I think it's great. I think a lot about how robots and AI technology can supplement teachers. So one teacher might be teaching, hopefully fewer kids, but at least in the near term, it's probably 20 or 30 kids per teacher, at least here in the US. And robots can then sort of take those high level concepts and give individualized education to a kid based on what their passions are. So, if it's a math topic, it's taught via music, right? Like about math and how fast the string is vibrating and all the math that goes beyond, behind music, if that's what the kid's passionate about. And using technology for that.
That's really cool. Yeah, music is math. If you're listening to this and you didn't know that already, that's a great thing to keep in mind. Any other thoughts? Kunal, do you have any other thoughts on that? And then I'd also like to open it up to questions from the audience. I don't want to pick on anybody, but I saw one of my friends who actually is a former engineer and has now gone into being a school teacher in math and science is in the audience. Maybe he'll have a question for us. I'd love to see some other questions come in that we can answer.
Super. So Jennifer, I'm a kid of the 80s where video games were the big thing. What hooks us all onto video games? What keeps us hooked is levels and rewards. So you feel good about yourself. You compare yourself to others. Of course, competition should be healthy, but what I strive to do with Swirl Music is keep adding levels to their growth, which they can access once they cross a certain level, and then rewarding them with stuff like badges or put them up on a stage and certificates, anything that gets their creative and competitive juices flowing. And let me tell you, this is not only confined to kids. I think all of us are competitive by nature, so I've seen this because we teach a lot of adults, especially now online in the lockdown in the last 1 year. They really like jumping from one level to the other. They ask the teacher that, hey, what'll I have to do to learn that Stairway to Heaven solo, and the teacher's like, okay, you got to nail this, then we can go for it. And they really get into it and do it. So for me, my answer would be, just gamify stuff as much as possible, level up, reward in whatever way possible, with the appropriate amount of reward, of course. You don't want to over reward kids for doing very little because that could backfire. Or you don't want to hold back rewards as well. So you've got to kind of find that perfect balance and then just keep adding levels and stuff like that. Because learning is continuous and never ending, in my opinion.
That's great. And we have a question from the audience. What do you mean by data-backed incentives? How can these help with self-driven education? Are these incentives for teachers or for students? I mean, I would say, I think you just gave a perfect example there, Kunal, of how we can, gamify this learning using these digital tools. I mean, I'm thinking about Ian and the Misty robotics as well. I think as these robots are generating a lot of data, how the kids or even adults interact with these tools, what they spend time doing, what they don't spend time doing. We can use all of that data, I think, to build in these kind of gamification systems or these systems of badges, awards to help, as you said, help people level up. I think that can apply through a lot of these scenarios that we're talking about. And they're great for students. I mean, I think they could be great for teachers too, especially if the teachers are learning how to be better teachers. There's no reason you can't apply these kinds of programs to all learning. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I think one more thing that I would add to what you just mentioned is identifying the talent with the student, how quickly you can recognize that and then automatically provide, like Ian was saying, obviously AI and ML could come a long way, but that's going to take several years even to reach these remote villages. So in the meantime, what can you do to identify that potential. That's what we are trying to do. Basically, they have some like self-learning curriculum that will assess at the end of each lesson plan to see the comprehension of the child and automatically route that person or child to next level. So immediately give some kind of an award. Obviously, it's a digital award, but nonetheless, it is an award, and share that with their parents. Now they can see, wow, my child is a fast learner. What can I do more to encourage that? I think you have to create that mechanism, both from the child's perspective as from the parent's perspective, but use these digital tools to quickly analyze that and then get it to that level. So I think that's really critical, and we are looking at a lot of contents from Khan's Academy and all those things that actually has this built in, and it is open source, so it comes free, so it doesn't come at a cost to us. Therefore, again, obviously, we are always constrained with the cost and budget, and what can we get from this open source that can be bundled in, because we want to provide these children a level playing field compared to urban counterparts. So I think that digital divide is something that we want to really reduce.
How great. I know probably looking at this panel, there were several of us who were kind of bored by school, and we would have liked to have been identified as people who might have wanted some more learning or some more challenging kinds of things to keep us engaged. And so I think that's a wonderful point. And yes, those kids who are fast learners could be out there anywhere. It's important to identify them and keep them engaged and keep giving them more to learn. So I think that's really wonderful. Any more questions from out there in the audience? Any questions that any of you have for the other panelists?
I have a question for Ian. I mean, the small robots that you have, can they be pre-packaged for like the kind of things that we are trying to do with the kids, and to teach or train the trainers kind of a program? So we have a pre-packaged program, and that can be sent. Of course, there are easier methods to do it also, for like we have pre-packaged tablets that we share with the teachers and all that. Can there be a difference, some differentiator between what your robot can do or what a simple tablet can do?
A lot of it's just the tangibility that we find. So, I mean, there's a big difference that we see with kids when they're, programming a circle on the screen to move around, versus this robot that when they build their first program, the robot starts moving and rolls off the table and flies onto the floor. And I think it's because it encompasses all your senses. And you get some of that with the tablet, but it's also like, chasing after the ball and moving it, and the smells and the hears and everything that's going on in your environment that reinforces that moment and that learning experience that you have. Definitely any sort of education is good, whether you're, painting with your finger on a screen, but I think there is something that enriches the experience and adds to the learning experience. For instance, when somebody's, squeezing out paint on a piece of paper on the floor and then controlling their robot to drive through it, and painting a picture that they hang on the wall of their home or their school. So I think there is a lot of the tangibility. I mean, even stuff like teachers in Denver, one of the schools, they have just a carpet, with just days of the week, and the kindergartners are like, she's like, drive Spiro on to the day after tomorrow, for instance, and just sort of that physical act of moving the Spiro to the day reinforces it versus just saying it or tapping the button.
That's really cool. I'm thinking for the kids who are
we could do some pilot using some of your robotics stuff with our children in the remote villages. I'm sure it would prove to us a lot of things that Pradeep was talking.
Love to do that. Definitely get in contact.
That would be amazing. I think for the kinesthetic learners, the hands-on tactile ones, they would really, really benefit from this. Yeah, that's wonderful. So I think we're out of time. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Thank you all. This has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. You've definitely sparked in me more passion for learning and for educating kids. It's always wonderful to hear from each of you and to hear from all of you together. It's been fantastic. So any other thoughts before we wrap up?
It's just been a pleasure being on this panel with all you guys. So much to learn from everyone's stories here, you know. Thank you all for your fantastic success stories.
So we'll catch up in Bombay, Kunal.
Yep, for sure. And good luck to everyone through the pandemic and into the future. You know, we've got such great intent and such noble thoughts, you know, in whatever we're doing. And hope we have everything in the universe pushing us to do what we do best and help as many people as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for moderating, and thank you, Buddy.
Thank you all for being here. Early in the morning for the Americans and the evening, Kunal, for you over in Bombay. Really appreciate the time.
Fantastic experience.
Super.
Being on this panel and sharing
Great,
so much
thanks.
valuable information. It's
great.
great to see so many things coming together.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yep.
Have
Bye-bye.
a fantastic day, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.